I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Municipal Fire Commission to order at 6:03 PM. Roll call: Hillary Lima, present. John Paul Verducci.
Here.
Lieutenant McCann.
Here.
Captain McAloon.
Here.
Les McGillivray. Peter Rondeau. Lee Weinmiller. Daniel Perillo. Robert Savetti. Stephen Angel. Acting Chief Witt. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America. Republic of under God, indivisible, liberty. All right. In the event of an emergency, those present this evening can exit outdoors labeled number 1 or 2 in the back of council chambers to the front lawn or back parking lot of town hall. Meeting minutes from prior meetings. We have one set this evening, June 13th, 2025. It's in your packets. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion. Do I hear a second? Second? Any discussion? Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have one abstention, Mr. McGillivray, and the motion passes. Public comment on docketed items. Those items on our agenda this evening, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Members of the public on Zoom, please raise your hand to be let in. And unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Robert Heavey, 607 Weaver Hill Road, Coventry.
We can hear you.
Hello. I'm probably premature, but it's the only chance I'll get to ask these questions the way the agenda is set up. So I have some serious concerns about the numbers in this report. The real crux of the matter is that it appears that the budget that is going to turn into a tax levy is based solely on the wages and doesn't incorporate all the numbers from the remaining operating expenses of a fire department. Is that correct?
Betty, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think the document that you're looking at is just showing the personnel. When we were looking at what the personnel costs would be, there are going to be some other items we'll look at this evening that would have some estimated budgets, just very, very ballpark budgets without digging into a lot of detail. So I think what's on the agenda was strictly the personnel. It did not have the full budget.
Right. And so the document is making a lot of conclusions about savings, but you don't even have the full budget. And, there's some other areas of concern, particularly if you look at like the equipment list and what equipment is being staffed or not staffed. It's very inconsistent between the stations. And let me flip pages here to get to the right point. But particularly it's what on page 16 of your document for Station 2 Hopkins Hill Road, you've got 5 pieces of equipment and only one of them is listed as manned as needed. So, one could assume that the other 4 are being staffed, but there's not that much staff at that station from the documents. So, the other item is your Station 4, which is Western Coventry. You've omitted the tanker, which also would be manned or staffed as needed. This document also has a series of deputy chiefs on this page. There are only 2 administrative positions in the staffing profile, so there are no other deputy chiefs. And the real, monkey in the room is, where is it being considered that there's probably a, $4 million startup charge to buy the station and equipment from Western Coventry Fire, to use a ballpark number. And where's that number being accounted for? Those are the highlights. There's a bunch of little points, but those are the key points that I think need to be thought about in this document. Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom, please raise your hand to be let in. Public comment going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment is closed. Moving now to business carried over from previous agenda. We have discussion on the draft Fire Commission budget estimate and discussion on Fire Commission tax analysis estimate. Mr. Savetti.
Okay, so again, very, as we say, very preliminary estimate as the, um, taxpayer just indicated as far as an initial purchase cost. There is no initial purchase cost, factored in here. Obviously, we'd have to look at capital. We'd have to look at what vehicles we need. My experience with other districts that have consolidated, whether into the municipalities or into other districts, there's never been an acquisition of having to purchase the assets from that entity. Those assets roll in. So that's obviously a legal matter that still needs to be resolved. How's that going to work out? So he's right. There's a lot of unknowns right now. So all we could do is strictly look at the budget scenarios or the personnel scenarios we put together at the last meeting, where we said, okay, if we had a staff of 57, which is the page you have here on legal. So at 57, we said the estimated payroll and benefits be roughly 8.7 million. A staff of 67 be roughly 10.1 million. So that's your starting point, right? For the personnel, that's going to be the majority of budget. Then I just went through some of the documents, the current budgets that each district has, some of the stuff that the former member, Mr. Teston, had provided, and just put together some of the other line items to the budget. So that's the first 2 sheets here. Excuse me. So when you look at the estimated annual expenditures, so again, on a 56 staffing plus a chief and a 66 staffing plus chief, at the top of page 2, you have the estimated annual expenditures for a staffing of 56, roughly 12.6 million. And again, I say roughly because there's a lot that we'd have to still dig into, but based on information that is currently available. A staffing of 66 and the chief would be a budget of approximately 14.3 million. And then you exclude from that estimated revenue sources. So we know the various districts currently have the ability to do some billing for rescue runs, accident billing, et cetera. So exclude, based on what they're currently collecting, estimated revenue of 1.4 million, estimated fire marshal revenue, 48,000, fire prevention revenue, bank interest and penalties on taxes. And Hopkins Hill has an agreement with Amgen, so you exclude that based on what they're currently receiving. So that revenue is about 1.9 million. So the amount, based on this preliminary estimate, that you would have to raise from taxes for the 2 scenarios would be roughly 10.6 million for a staffing of 56, or 12.3 million for a staffing of 66. And then below that, I give you a little presentation of what does this mean on the tax rates. Right, so increase in the fiscal 2026 tax rate, if this took effect as of July 1, so a week ago, we would have saw an increase of 17.13% on the tax rate. And for the 56 personnel, or a 19.66% increase in the tax rate. And then I give you the two tax rates below there. So just looking at residential rate would be,
But can we just,
I'm gonna skip to the next.
no, so I was just gonna say, so we're saying increase, but in a 56, which is really status quo, correct? For what's a
Less.
little less than,
Currently, they're at about 48.
so, but I think that column in particular, you can say the word increase, but really it's, you're now paying your taxes all to the same place.
Correct.
Yes, it's being added to the, it would be added to the levy, but people aren't going to, in terms of hitting their pocketbook and what they're paying, they're now just paying all of their bills to the same place.
Correct. But
That's what that's a
the next
reflection
page
of.
where you'll see the actual
Yeah.
increase when you factor in the two rates.
Right, yeah,
There is still going to be an increase, but not that significant.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, if we just jump to the next page where you could see, comparison of the rates. So you see, based on the 2024 tax rolls, what each district, what their current tax rates were. So this is assessment date as of 12/31/23, which was, each district is already billed on this. You could see the town's tax rate, I'll stick strictly with residential. The town's tax rate was 15.837. The Coventry district was $1.96, Hopkins Hill $1.95, Central $1.57, and Weston $1.65. So when you combine those rates, it brings you each district. So the Coventry district was paying $17.79, Hopkins Hill $17.79. I'm rounding for those that can't see this. Central Coventry combined rate with the town was $17.40, and Weston is $17.49. So then below that, we show you again the two rates. So you're saying, okay, if we had a combined, you'd be at an $18.55 rate, which shows the people in the Coventry district would see a 4.25% tax increase. Hopkins Hill would have saw a 4.29% tax increase. Residents in Central would see an increase of 6.58%, and residents in Weston would see an increase of 6.08%. I think that's what you were just alluding to, that it wouldn't be that huge percentage increase because you are combining them, but you can see those numbers there is what those percentage increases were. And then obviously if we went to the 67 firefighter personnel, you could see those rate increases range from 6.5% to 8.37%. Now, again, we had prelim discussions with folks from the state, and with those discussions, they said based on past history, they don't look at bringing in the other department as, being an automatic able to exceed the tax cap of 4%. So they would be looking at it as an 18-point-something% increase, because not saying we're rolling the other ones in. But we would certainly be able to provide the facts and the details to show that reality, it's not 18% if you factor in those other rates, what they were paying. It's more on that line of, 4.25 up to 8.37, depending which scenario you went under. Again, until we really get a lot of details on the budget and able to drill down on a lot of details. I know there's been questions going back and forth as far as the compensation for the fire chief. It's currently listed in here as what we're paying for a chief. Well, when you look at that rate versus some of the deputy chiefs, it's very close. So there's obviously going to have to be some adjustments to some of these rates and then some of the additional costs. We did eliminate, in this scenario, I did eliminate some of those costs that, was mentioned in the report that was provided, that we would see savings in, obviously, office personnel, tax collection personnel, those type of costs, as well as, potentially legal fees, audit fees. I know it's mentioned in the report that there could be insurance savings. I don't know how much we would see in insurance savings. Other than the fact if we're getting rid of some of the equipment that we don't need, we would see some savings there. But I think, the cost to insure the equipment, whether we stay as a separate entity or all combined, for the most part, I think some of the stuff is, some of the districts are through the trust. Some may still be using VFIS, but I think it'd be pretty comparable. And then it also mentioned savings with street lighting, which at this point, I don't know how we would save on street lightings other than the process of where Central's currently in the process of looking to transfer the street lightings over to LEDs. So do a conversion, which will see savings in the long run. As far as the cost of electricity, it's going to be the same whether it comes as one town, comes as part of the town. But again, it's a very rough budget because there's still a lot of unknowns and, taxpayer that just mentioned, he's right. If we have to buy the equipment that's currently already part of one of these districts, well, you're increasing your debt service significantly.
Having taxpayers pay for something twice.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, my opinion. I haven't seen it in the past with other districts. They kind of consolidate. There has been instances in other districts which have been publicly known where, some districts prior to the merger, they decided to spend off a lot of the cash reserves, which only resulted in that now consolidated district going under state oversight. I believe they're still under state oversight.
But a point was made, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Discussion on the the estimated budget and the tax roll, combined tax roll. Yep, go ahead.
So I'm in big picture mode right along with you. I know there's a lot of details. First big picture question. What is the combined take on the four separate, sources now, I guess, in revenue from that they're levying on their own for the districts? Good. Okay. So that's what I was wondering because with the other operating page you have, is that operating all in where we have the 10,643 net of revenue? That's what I was wondering. If we're like 11 and 11, I wouldn't expect to see that big of a raise. What part am I missing? Because that's the big picture stuff before I can go into the little stuff. Just big picture wise. So even though we need 11 and we have 11, we still have an increase? And then the second thing I think would be helpful, at least in terms of presentation, because I'm assuming we're going to include these in, the report eventually. Can we take what you did with the percentages and convert them to dollars based on the average house maybe? Those percentages I think look worse than the dollar increase, but if we're going to, just to make it maybe a little clearer. And then the last one you just mentioned, the 623 in the operating savings. Is that built into your operating here or is that already taken out?
Those costs are not listed here. I'd have to see how in this other report we came up with the actual 623,000 savings. But all the positions and the line items that I thought were, would be eliminated upon consolidation have been removed from the.
Okay, gotcha.
Already gone.
Okay. All right, that's all for me at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with showing kind of the breakdown per home value, the assessed value piece as you're talking about. And we'll make sure that we can get, I don't know if we have the final number in the report in terms of the revenue piece, but we should make sure that we do. Anyone else on the estimated budget at this point? Okay. Thanks, Bob. And then do we have an estimated timeline on the MERS analysis, by the way, just because we'll include that in the report as well as the status.
Yeah, at this point, we'd have to get information from Weston as far as their personnel and decide if they would join in, they wouldn't join in. So we'd have to provide the information to the retirement system, and then they're looking at 8 weeks minimum.
Have the information. Weston sent the information over, so we have the information as of today. Obviously, the council will have to appropriate whatever that bill is, 12, 13,000. And then it'll be 8 to 10 weeks, they said.
Yeah. Mike, we'll get yelled at.
You would need if they want to go into the MERS? Or what exactly do you need me to ask them?
Well, Steve, the chief gave me all the information that we need right now. And then they'll, at the time, they'll have to decide whether they want to go in or not, but for now, we're gonna put everyone in.
So you don't need anything from me?
No.
That would be a one-time decision. So if this did move forward and we went into the MERS plan, they would either opt in initially, but then any future employees would automatically have to go on the MERS. It wouldn't be an option going forward. It's just for those folks that are already grandfathered in, not part of the plan.
Okay. There's nothing else. Yep, go ahead.
This made me think, is there a potential, anything would come off this operating with the switch to MERS, or is the pensions going to remain kind of as is and operating? I'm just looking for little pockets where we might do good, to wash out the ones we don't do good in.
Excuse me. On the personnel page, we did factor in the pension where I used an estimated pension rate of 34.09%. So we're factoring everybody being in the pension plan here. So at this point, the pension on, the first page, the estimated budget does not include the current 401k or 401a plan of Weston because we're factoring it if everybody is on MERS. So I don't think there's anything that falls off. What we would really see is, what's that real rate going to be? And then there's, I think I mentioned that the last meeting, there's also, again, legal issues we have to look at that the folks at the retirement system indicated where when you have a plan that's fully funded and you're going to consolidate with plans that are not fully funded, do you run into some IRS issues? And that's something we'd have to have the solicitor look into.
Anything else? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda was the draft report. I want to be very clear that we had to start somewhere. So feel free to redline the crap out of this and say what it's missing or what it needs, but we had to start somewhere, and I didn't see anybody else raising their hands to sit down and put this together. So I have some comments I'd like to run through first in terms of what I believe it may be missing or needs, and then we can open it up from there. I think what's important to know is that clearly when this goes to the town council on the 22nd, there's information that we need to tell them that we still don't have, but we're coming to them based on the resolution that says we need to report out to them on where we're at. So that was the spirit of this. So just running through in terms of the draft in front of you, I've got a version in front of me with some word comment bubbles. So let's see here. So one thing in general is that I mentioned throughout is we need to have an appendix with this, with the full file versions of some of these that we work through. Obviously, it's really tough to read the inventory of our apparatus, and that's not the full workbook, but we're just going to need to make sure that we index those for the public and the council to look at. On that same page where there's the inventory of apparatus, that figure, kind of the screenshot there, one of the questions I had, and I went over this with Vice President Verducci, is clarifying currently how many firefighters are actually in service and staffed right now versus how many we're showing budgeted. So if we can include a document or include more information there, I'm happy to take that so we can at least show that picture. So that's one of them. Another point I think that we talked about a little bit in previous meetings, but we haven't actually articulated here. In terms of the current staffing apparatus and service, that page with the screen grab from Brian's presentation he did, there's mention of the phase 1 service improvement plan. I do think we need to put in here information about what adding a body means for response time and kind of the professional nature of firefighting service itself. Am I making sense? Like showing that when you add these firefighters, these bodies, and you add an additional apparatus, like what does that mean for improved service delivery or the wait time for a call for somebody to show up at the house? I don't know how to articulate that. That's why I'm asking the professionals in the room, but that's something that needs to be addressed, I think, and it fleshed out in word here. Let's see. We heard the notes in terms of the organizational chart. Again, this I just grabbed from a previous document that was considered at one of our previous meetings. I'm happy to make edits to this and however anyone sees fit. Again, just pulled it from a previous discussion, so I'm not married to any of this. And at the end of the day, I think generally this is going to be left up to whoever the chief is to make these staffing decisions. Administrative redundancies, I know way back in the beginning in February, we had a document that did all the math on this. So we need to add that as an appendix or a visual there. Same with the CIP plan, Russ, that I know you put together. We need to make sure we add that as an appendix. The debt and pension liability, we talked about the anticipated timing on that analysis. The next page with the tax roll analysis, we've just got new information here, so we're gonna have to update that with what Bob shared tonight. I'm also open to feedback on how we can better represent. We did a peer community service comparison and those communities that had similar population. So I don't know if how we want to represent that, whether we just attach the Excel workbook that was discussed and for the council to interpret. So that was another note I had. The budget modeling, obviously that needs to be updated given the information we've discussed tonight. The draft budget, I talked about that. The legal and legislative considerations, I'm told I'll have that next week from the solicitor to include as an appendix with further detail. I'm all open to any feedback or additional copy to add to this comparative evaluation of all service models. I think this is really important. And I'd like to hear more from folks on what we can add or should be taken away on this table. And then really important in the conclusion, I want to make sure we understand that basically this report is in summary saying, here's what we've looked at, here's some of the numbers and modeling that we've done. It's now up to you, town council, to decide what more information that you need. And we'll go from there and basically take, because there's actually note on this fire commission budget agenda. The clerk had put the next meeting is whatever date, and I said, technically, we don't have any more meetings because we need to wait for the council to tell us what they want. All right, that's all of my notes. Please chime in on how we want to massage this a bit, what other sections we need to put in. I know some people have already had notes, so I'll open it up.
I have a couple notes.
Yeah,
Um,
and I apologize. I should have numbered these pages. That was dumb. But I,
key findings.
hang on. Can you name like a picture that's near it?
The current staffing / apparatus and service under that. The 4 bullet points.
Yep.
So I think we should either get rid of bullet point 4 and add it to the paragraph underneath, or put the paragraph underneath into bullet 5. I think that this, where firefighters and apparatus go, should be determined by the new chief.
Okay.
I think both are equally as important. Understanding a lot of the calls and population is out east, but you also have delayed that could get there quicker, like West Warwick. Versus if Station 7's not there, mutual aid is a lot
Yep.
slower.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, Next one is on, you don't have the pages, page 10, um, which is the organizational chart. Bob kind of alluded to this already. It says engine 4. Arguably with non-hydrant areas of Western, could be argued that a tanker is more important
Okay.
than an engine, or I'm not a firefighter. Obviously, if you're using it for mutual aid to the east, they wouldn't really want a tanker. They would want an engine. So I don't know. Obviously, this would be more of a council or a chief thing, but if you only want one apparatus, maybe an engine tanker would be better. Or if you want two apparatus, then an engine and a tanker. I don't think we should negate the tanker.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes a little bit for mutual aid tankers to get there depending on their staffing. So just for water purposes out there,
Okay.
chime in because I am not a firefighter.
Not disagreeing. I just think it was an oversight.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
In the comparative evaluation of service models. Let's see, I think it's 2 comments. For the second one, Unified Independent Fire District.
Yep.
Under con, you might want to just let the council know, the Western Coventry Board would most likely not vote in favor for it. I know that kind of goes with the legal steps and cooperation, but if you wanted to get a little more in the weeds with that,
Okay.
it's the second to last page.
The table, the pros and cons table.
And then the last one, the municipal department, east only, and then Western Coventry remains. Is that possible to do? I thought it was kind of if it was a municipal, it was one, like all or nothing.
No, the conversation we've had about if Eastern went municipal and Western stayed by itself is there's a policy debate about whether you abate those residents
Okay.
in that district or they get the same tax bill that everybody else gets. That's the policy.
Just
discussion.
wanted to make sure we weren't diving further into legal issues if
Yep.
that was more of that, but. that-
Yeah, and I don't, it's not so much a legal piece, it's a policy question. Yep.
That's all I had for the very quick look I looked at it.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else with their notes?
Do you want to add anything about the successes of some other districts who have done this already?
Like any case studies or something?
Add something, a paragraph about how well it worked in East Greenwich and the benefits.
Yeah, if you have something to send. Do we know of any places where they went through an exercise similar and it ended up not happening and why? I think that's just as important too. Like what have been the barriers anywhere else?
I think anybody's on record of not having one done or failed one.
Okay. So I've heard conversation about Cumberland went to an independent single district, but I've heard they're in trouble too.
You haven't found that out yet.
Okay,
I'll look into it.
all right.
That was the district I was referring to earlier. When they were prior to consolidation, 1 or 2 of the independent districts decided to spend everything they
Ah,
had.
okay.
They consolidated. Now they didn't have the resources, so they went into financial crisis. So the state is in there. They've been in there for several years at this point.
Okay,
They're under state oversight.
got it.
I'm sorry.
I was,
Now Lime Rock's part of Lincoln. Lime Rock's still independent. In Lincoln, you had Lonsdale failed financially, so Lonsdale got absorbed by Salesville at one point. And then most recently, Salesville and Albion combined into the Lincoln Fire District. But you still had Manville, Lime Rock, and Winville are still separate fire districts. So 2 out of the 5 consolidated. Manville didn't want to be part of the consolidations. They stayed out, but again, they're still an independent district, not part of the.
It would be interesting to see how they decided on the tax abatement. If we're looking at that too. Do you happen to know?
Oh, yeah, do we know about that?
There was no tax abatement because each district, they're still independent districts, so the town's not billing.
Oh,
As independent districts.
see.
Now you still have
Yeah.
Lincoln Fire District bills all the residents of Salesville and Albion, whereas the other districts still bill their residents. So there is no, again, there's no town department. Same thing in Cumberland, the Cumberland districts, or one district now bills the taxpayer, so there is no abatement.
Right now. Central Coventry, Harris Fire District, Washington Fire District, Tioga Fire District merged in 2006. So it's the same thing, it's just here instead of in Lincoln. And we still now have the 4 separate districts. We used to be 7.
Who can I put down as a note to give me the formal figures on? Because right now we say on that current staffing page or under the apparatus of 4 districts, we say what the budgeted is in terms of apparatus and firefighters across the stations, but can I look to somebody to send me what we're actually staffed and what, so I can paint that picture? Okay.
I got one question, if I could.
Yeah.
We talk about, I think we all understand that more staffing's better service. Is there a way to quantify what that is? I know Dynamix did the study about response times and locations, but is there a way that we can grab a number, say a 6-month number, how long it took to get a rescue to a customer?
That's my question, right? So it's like, right now, I want to know, like, what's the average wait time based on where you live in Coventry if you call 911? And if you add another apparatus back online, whether it's Station 7 or it's Station 1, what does the service improvement look like? Like, I don't know how to calculate that. I don't know what that means, but that's why I'm looking to firefighters in the room.
Wouldn't dispatch have that information?
Yes, we can get that information from dispatch. That's actually something we could have at the next meeting,
We don't have a next meeting before we go to the council.
to present to the town council.
Yeah.
We could simply find exactly what the response times are. And again, that's gonna vary whether or not, let's say Rescue 8 is at Kent Hospital. Next closest rescue is Hopkins Hill, or West Greenwich Rescue 2, or Forster if they're in service. So those times will vary depending on, who's in and out. And that's one of the biggest things that we need to look at. If the rescue's in service, response time in Western Coventry is probably about 7 minutes. If their rescue is at Kent Hospital, now it's coming from Hopkins Hill, you're looking more at a 12-minute, maybe a 15-minute response time.
Yeah.
What you should be able to find though is a raw number that points to the fact, this is your benefit. Whether it's 45 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes. And you're right, there's going to be discrepancies depending on locations and where the call comes, but it'll still be a solid number.
It's an average that's over a baseline of data. That's
Exactly. And then Dynamix in that, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Maybe you can produce that differential. Because if it's about selling a product, lack of a better word, then easy and simple, I think, would make a big difference. Just like instead of percentages, how much is the cost of the average house? What will this be? Because the next question, well, what am I going to get for that? Better service. Yeah, no kidding. I can watch any commercial on TV, it's better service. Let's see a raw number.
Exactly, improve response times. That's big. We show them where we're at now.
Just show it. That's here's
We're at now and where we.
this is the expectation.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then for future considerations, we We have different models that are considered here. So, if we're not seeing the improvement by adding, maybe we stop adding, that kind of information would be.
Beyond that, if the council or whoever is making a decision, at least they're going in eyes wide open, knowing here's what this investment means in terms of response time, and they can make the decision. Jillian, you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say, it might be easier, for lack of a better word, to get the averages for like nursing homes and assisted living. So for example, out in Western, I think it's called Pine Acres. It's way out in our district. So if Rescue 8's there versus whatever the next rescue is, whoever it might be. I know there's another one on Weaver Hill, potentially. Yeah. So that would be another, out in Western at least. I don't know about, other places out in Eastern, what you guys get called a lot to, but I think that might be the one on Weaver. But that would be like a good thing for averages, just because it's the same place each time.
We could give, right, so we could give the average currently of what we're staffed at now with the vehicles that are on the road. We can get that average. With the comparison for phase one service improvement, that's not gonna change.
And that's kind of why I was arguing for
The
Station
only
7.
advantage to this phase one is that we're all under one working umbrella now. It's not gonna change your response times. It's still gonna remain the same as they are now, spread out the way they are. Okay, we understand that.
We still gotta, we can't assume everybody knows that.
Right.
Is my point.
We should also ask about financial analysis on how long districts can survive right now, as they can operate independently versus municipal, working off the numbers that we have and the projections that they're going.
I can just say with that, right, with the comparisons of being independent, staying independent, that none of these districts can survive on their own because they do not meet the standards, the NFP, any of the NFPA standards. This is the idea emerging.
That'd be a good thing to put on the report then,
Okay.
so they have the full picture.
How can you forecast how much longer a district can live on its own? Do you make an assumption of them not being able to pass a budget? Like, is it a matter of looking at the forecast of what kind of budget increases they're gonna need going forward? Like, tell me what that looks like.
I think not. When you come to comparables like Central, you go into a budget cycle where it's voted down every year. You have to level fund. That just kicks the can down the road and makes it worse. My philosophy out of it.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. The variables of every 4 to 6 years, we get new members on the board. Again, you could have members that, like Kevin said, they just kick the can down the road. And that same thing could start happening to Hopkins Hill, Western Coventry.
This is where that's where you lose personnel.
The instability, yeah.
The instability of it all, yeah, is where you start losing personnel.
How many times in the last 5 years have Central Coventry personnel gone unpaid for a period of time?
The last time we had it, we went 5 weeks.
How many times because there's been a couple periods where they went unpaid.
We had 2 periods of that. One was 5 weeks and then one was only 2.
So that was in 23 and 24?
23, that was only 2 weeks. Yeah, it was only 2.
22,
And the board that was in-
2022 and 2023?
The board that was in there did a great job trying to balance the budget and we worked tremendously.
Didn't Coventry Fire District also have a?
Yes, that was back in 2016, 17. They went 6 weeks. 6 pay periods. Back then, they were getting weekly.
Okay.
Yeah, no employee wants to ever see that again, including myself.
Okay, so just to recap here, Russ, if you can share some information to include about some case studies or where this has seen success. If we can get a paragraph about NFP standards and comparing the districts to what they have and where they need to be in terms of the national standards would be helpful. Other notes here. If I can get some background on, or just the figures on what the current staffing is, actual, not budgeted, for the staffing models introduction page. I can massage the bullets and the language there on the next page, Jillian, there from the. Yeah, that would be very helpful. You can, if you can share some dispatch info.
I'd like to, and also would like to do too is the proposed organizational chart. That was kind of something that we ballparked together. I'd like to work with the current administration to kind of show what it is now and what it could be over the next phase 1 and phase 2.
All right.
So it's a little like I said, with the tanker and other stuff. I work with my chief and Central Coventry's acting chief, just to kind of see what it would look like with phase 1 to phase 2.
Okay, all right. Mark you down for that. I made the note about the tanker. And then I just have all the appendix notes of the stuff we need to attach, but I know Dan and Bob have all of those saved. I'll add the note about the timing around and what needs to be done with the MERS analysis. Updating the tax roll analysis and the budget estimate, including what JP mentioned about what that looks dollar-wise for assessed value.
Could I tie into that too? To Bob's point, we should probably have something for the equipment and station potential purchase of Western.
Okay.
How much that would be for assessed value. So we have an actual number on that. And then maybe have,
4 million accurate, you think, or close to it?
I don't think that's accurate. Maybe new. I don't think that's, I mean, our tanker's older than I am, I think. So I don't think you'd be getting $1 million for that, but a new one you would. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Just.
It's just so your head nodding and then,
I'm just thinking, again, I know Kevin's looking at this, is we're taking that estimate of $4 million, it's a ballpark figure. That stuff's already been paid for by the taxpayers.
Mhm.
We're gonna make the taxpayers pay for that again?
No, I understand, but
I'm just saying, so we give everybody this,
the council needs to know that
yeah,
that's what one district intends to do.
and then
Just go a certain way.
maybe,
They need to know that that's part of the equation.
maybe have a separate column. So the columns you have now, and then separate columns, what it would be with that purchase. So we could see the difference for that as well.
You want an estimate on a truck, it's $15,000 for a 32-year-old.
Okay.
Too much
So-
estimate.
But if we have it like in writing, like, yeah, I don't think our tanker is worth $1 million. I think a new one would be. I don't know what our building is worth. I am not a real estate person. But we also have 2 buildings, so it depends on if you're taking both of them or just one.
Well, wouldn't that be incumbent upon the Western Coventry District to hire a realtor or to get that, what they believe it's?
I'm gonna defer that to Steve.
That's up to that district. If they want to sell it, town shouldn't have to pay them in order to have them tell us what to pay. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like if you wanted to buy my house and I made you pay for my realtor to sell.
Sure.
The other thing too that we put in the resolution is that we would do a forecast for first 3 years of a municipal. Are we able to make a guess there, or? Obviously, it's all a guess.
The whole thing's an estimate.
The CBA would.
So it's really, deciding on that starting point, right? Are we starting at 57? Are we starting at 67? And then what are you looking to do? I know, one of the earlier meetings, we said ideal and even not to fully be it where we should be would be 89. So we're saying we want to be at 89 in 3 years. So how much are we increasing, right? Because if we're needing to add staff each year in order to do that 2-year out, 3-year out period, I need to know what we're gonna change the staffing level.
Yeah, I'm saying I only want to see these two as an official who's going to be reviewing this and considering this. I don't want to see a figure for 89 in the next 3 years. Absolutely not. I don't know about you, but no way. I'm sorry. I just got to be realistic.
Kev, what's the NFP standard based on? Is it population and equipment? Like, what are the criteria?
You have a standard with the population, if I'm not, Russ, but then there's a standard for apparatus.
Okay.
You need a minimum amount of people to show up for a residential structure fire in a rural area is 17. With this first model, we're right there. We're still under it, but we're way under it with the individual districts. Nobody has that many guys on duty. If you were looking to stand as a standalone district, Anthony Fire Department has 3 guys on duty.
Yeah.
And operate car accident. If you were independent, really independent, want to be on, nobody has that. We don't either. We only have 6 guys on duty because we want to keep guys. We were willing to drop down, but it's killing us.
Do we know if that rating has an effect on, availability of grants, insurance rates, things, that are benefits for the,
I think we've already discussed that with the grant writer for the town, right? The bigger the group, the better.
the rating itself, though, even that? Okay. And then homeowners insurance, anything like that come into play on these? Yeah.
That's been looked at before. It was up.
Just so we can add these things, like, we've been finding plenty of cons, but a couple of pros would be.
At our storm the other day, which was, it's like once in a while, we roll up to a house with 2 guys. 1 people out of the house, not fun, let me tell you.
Any idea how many departments in the state are NFP certified? A third, half?
So what is it?
Not really credit, it's meeting that
Standard.
standard, yeah, most.
Yeah, do we know how many? That's some number we need to.
Most of the bigger cities.
Well, we're the 7th largest municipality,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, we don't
you
meet.
saying anyone over us, our size?
Cranston, Warwick,
Warwick,
maybe.
Providence.
Yeah, probably the 3 biggest ones. Maybe East Providence too.
Comparable to Cumberland, right? So comparable to Cumberland, they meet the standard. They have a minimum of 3 men on a truck. We don't have that here in town.
Yeah, our sister.
Standard, I'm sorry, the standard for 1710 is 4. We know we can't afford that. At least try to work with somebody again.
I have a question regarding scheduling. You said we don't have a next meeting. The 22nd was posted. Is that when we're presenting to the town? Okay. I wasn't sure if it was going to be on a Tuesday because that's a Thursday.
No,
So
the 22nd meeting is a Tuesday.
what is?
It's a
Okay.
calendar. The 20, so yeah, originally Joanne, when she was putting the agenda together, put that we would meet on the 24th, and I'm like, no.
Maybe that's where I was getting it from. Okay.
So, so if, obviously I hope that the committee plans to be there on that night to answer questions. We'll file it as a joint meeting of the commission and the town council. So that way members of the committee can speak in accordance with OMA. Any other notes on this? I think there's a lot of really good points made in terms of addition. Did we address Mr. Heavy's points? Jillian?
Yeah, we did mention a tanker.
I think it was the tanker. I remember the other ones. There's some of the budgeting, but you had,
Yeah, whether that levy was based on personnel and operating or just personnel.
Yeah, because we had only done personnel at previous open meetings.
and then adding the purchase of Western. That was another one. I don't know if he's still on. I don't remember
I
the
mean,
others off the top of my head.
if you can get us what you consider the estimates to be if these assets, the capital assets were listed for sale, That would be helpful, so we're not just taking a shot in the dark here.
But what is that number? Is that what it would cost us to go buy these?
To buy it from Western.
So as it
Yeah,
sits
from-
today,
But as, the number that's been thrown out there is 4 million. But that's based on the numbers in the apparatus inventory we've done of what they were purchased new. Obviously.
Right, that's what I was
my
wondering.
assumption,
Yeah,
Okay.
obviously an engine that is, how old are they?
I know that's in the report.
Let me see.
The big things are the rescue is brand new, I believe, right? And the building was 1.8, I believe.
It's all, they're
And
also.
and then the rescue. Correct. Yep.
I'm looking right.
2002 tankers 96.
Yeah, so those are not gonna be sold at new.
2024, the engine is 2007.
So they're all almost 20 years old,
2008.
plus years old. For those three.
And then I guess my next question would be, just so we're not spinning our wheels on our end, the station that's, I don't know what station number it is, but the green station that's not currently manned, would that be something that you guys would also be interested in with this municipal, or would that be something that we should do separately?
What are your thoughts?
It's a too big garage.
Yep.
So-
I think we use it for like ISO ratings and such. I think
So-
that's the,
is that gonna-
to the right. So it increased our, yeah, so for example, my insurance, they do say that as or as a station, so my insurance is less than if it would be further away. They actually asked me that, I guess, to answer your question.
At a
Um,
station? That's not.
They don't ask if it's manned, they just ask for a fire station.
What?
Yeah. At least my insurance. I don't know if that's every insurance. Sorry.
Exactly.
But we do have apparatus in that station. So I mean, in theory. What? The apparatus? Do you want our old rescue? It's for sale right now. But that would be like, obviously taxpayers out there would want their home insurance to be less. So if you wanted to station, then people would be happier probably. I would be happier.
We should at least inventory it. It's not like it's the Harris station, which the town doesn't even own.
Which was a travesty to get rid of. Might make that bullet point, sorry.
Make that note.
Central did sell a truck. It was
To Bill's place.
rescue. The thing was, drove it into the ground. I'm brand new. We got $25,000 on GovX. Sold it on GovX. Yeah. So that worked out pretty good for us.
Okay. I'll send out an email to the group. Obviously, don't reply all that just says, here's what you all owe me. Or you can send it to Dan, whatever. Anything else on the draft report? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you guys took the time to review ahead of this. What? Trying. Okay. Agenda here.
Could I make a motion, just because I know Steve's, I don't know if he has any questions, but if we can do public comment or
Yeah, if you want a motion at a public
you-
comment.
do you have anything to say or? Okay, I just wanted to make sure, I know you came late, so.
I actually, while I was sitting here, forwarded you this from tonight. So happy to catch up with you and Bob and whoever via phone if you want, whatever you missed. Okay. I think that's all the business before us this evening. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn at 7:03